Hello, Year 7. We are going to be doing a little assessment today, and it's really focusing on you writing about poetry and trying to use a C style to show your understanding of the Timothy Winters poem. Now that I know that as soon as we say to you, we have an assessment, everyone goes, ah, and struggles and panics because the word assessment has been used. So really, I don't want to call this assessment. I want to call this having a go, seeing how well you can write about the poetry. Now, most of you have been working really, really well on this poetry. And I thought what I would try to do is to give you a few little hints. So I'm going to talk you through the Timothy Winters poem. I'm also going to talk you through the PowerPoint that you will have in front of you. So obviously you can see on the screen that you've got a poem that gives a picture of what it was like for some children following the Second World War. So what it was like for this boy, Timothy Winters, and how difficult life was for him. Okay, so if we have a look at the poem itself, and I'll read through the poem, and I'm going to talk about one or two little things as we read through. So Timothy Winters comes to school with eyes as wide as a football pool, ears like bombs and teeth like splinters. A blitz of the boy is Timothy Winters. And that line, a teeth like splinters, that simile, teeth like splinters, is actually a really sad line. Splinters, what are splinters? They're kind of sharp things that are able to pierce. And his teeth are sharp. That doesn't mean that he's a werewolf or a vampire. I think what Causley is trying to tell us is that he's suffering from terrible tooth decay and his teeth are breaking so that they're sharp. Now, imagine how painful that must be. Okay, but this is how this boy has to live. So the simile, teeth like splinters, it shows his tooth decay, and splinters shows us how sharp they are. And a splinter can cause injury, and obviously these can cause injury to poor Timothy Winters. And it says his belly is white, his neck is dark. So obviously he's not clean. He's not being able to wash himself. And his hair is an exclamation mark. A little bit my hair, a little bit like my hair at the moment. It's massively long because I've not been able to have it cut like most people. But his hair being an exclamation mark shows how perhaps his hair is stuck up on end. So it's unkempt, it's untidy, it's not washed properly, it's not brushed at all. And his hairs are enough. His clothes are enough to scare a crow. And through his breeches the blue winds blow. And that is a really interesting line. Through his breeches the blue winds blow. Breeches are trousers. It's an old word for trousers. And we're told that the blue winds blow through his trousers. What that really implies is that his trousers are so threadbare, so full of holes, so worn out that the blue winds blow through them. So the wind can blow through the holes. It keeps them cold. And because the word blue is used, blue implies freezing cold. So he's unable to keep warm. Poor Timothy Winters. Now, when the teacher talks, he won't hear a word, and he shoots down dead the arithmetic bird. And I think that's really quite interesting. He shoots down dead the arithmetic bird. It shows that he's really not understanding what he's being told at school. So that metaphor, he shoots down dead the arithmetic bird, suggesting that that arithmetic is like a bird. Okay, and he is shooting it down. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about his education. Perhaps he doesn't see the point of his education. And he licks a pattern off his plate, and he's not even heard of the welfare state. And that's really sad, because when this poem was written in 1950, as you probably learnt in that last lesson on the context, the welfare state had only been around for about 2 years. And the welfare state it's a safety net. It's a way that the government can help people who are living in poverty. And here we have Timothy Winters. He's living in poverty, but obviously the welfare state is not helping him. So it's not working properly yet. Now, if we move on to the next slide, Timothy Winters has bloody feet, and he lives on a house in Seward Street. He sleeps in a sack on the kitchen floor, and they say there aren't boys like him anymore. Note that he sleeps in a sack on the kitchen floor. He's not got a bed. He's not got a bedroom. Okay, and he's having to literally sleep on the floor. Okay, and a sack, really, a sack is something that is full of things, like it might be something useful like coal, but it's just full of something. It's not even defined. He sleeps in a sack on the kitchen floor. So his bedding is like a sack. It's that rough, horrible Hessian material that makes you itch and hurts. But the poet says they say there aren't boys like him anymore. So it's implying that people don't understand that Timothy Winters is living in absolute awful poverty. So old man Winters, now that's his father, likes his beer, and his missus ran off with a bombardier. So Timothy's mother's run away with a soldier. But it's interesting that Timothy's father and his grandmother, because she sits in the grate with a gin, they both drink. Now, what that's perhaps suggesting is that they both drink too much, and therefore, because they're drinking, perhaps because they're living in poverty, alcohol in those days was quite cheap to get hold of. And perhaps because they're living in poverty, they drink to kind of escape how awful their life is. But of course, what that means is that they're neglecting Timothy. And then we go on. The welfare worker lies awake, but the law's as tricky as a 10-foot snake. So the welfare worker is a little bit like a social worker these days. It's someone who wants to help, but he can't help because the law is very tricky. It's not allowing him perhaps to take Timothy Winters away, perhaps to give him to give him or to give the family money to help them. So Timothy Winters drinks his cup and slowly goes on growing up. So nothing changes for Timothy Winters as he's getting older. His situation hasn't changed. And at morning prayers, the master helves. So what we have is when Timothy Winter goes to school, they have prayers in the morning. That was quite common in those days, even common actually when I was at primary school, or less so secondary school, but certainly primary school. When I was at primary school, we would have an assembly every morning and we would have prayers in those assembly. That may have happened for you. It's something that doesn't happen so much in secondary schools. But I know I can remember my father and my mother telling me that that's what happened to them when they were in secondary school. The fact that in the morning they would have an assembly and the headmaster or the headmistress at the time, the head teacher we call them now, would offer a prayer and everyone would have to pray. So the morning prayers the master held, so the headmaster prays for children less fortunate than ourselves. So he's praying for poor people. And it's quite ironic in a sense because Timothy Winters is poor. And his is the loudest response and the loudest response in the room is when Timothy Winters roars, "Amen." Okay, so Timothy Winters really wants that help. He recognizes that he's less fortunate than everyone else, and he really wants that help. And what he's doing is he's asking God for the help because he's getting no help from anywhere else. So the final stanza. So come on, angel, come on, 10. Timothy Winters says, Amen, 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 amen. Timothy Winters, Lord, amen. And notice in that last stanza, the word amen is repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Okay, and really, I suppose the word amen is repeated so often because what it shows is Timothy Winters' desperation. The fact that he really, really, really needs this help because he is living in such abject poverty. His father and his grandmother are neglecting him. He sleeps on the kitchen floor. He's so poor that he can't. His teeth are falling apart. He's neglected. His hair's standing up on end. He's not washing. His clothes are falling to bits. So what we've done is I've talked you through some of the poem. And I've talked you through lots of ideas within this poem. And I think perhaps this is a part of the video that you might want to come back to, because as I progress through, okay, what we've tried to show you is Oh, we got that lovely little video as well. So if you want to watch the video to help your understanding a little bit more about the poem. Okay, so what you're going to be asked to do is you're going to be asked to write three C's paragraphs. What does Timothy Winters look like and why is he so scruffy? How does he behave at school and why do you think this is? And what is life like for Timothy at home? Okay, so what I've done when I've spoken about this, I've spoken about lines which show you what he looks like, and talked about the poverty. I've talked about how he behaves at school, and it's interesting actually because there are two parts about that. There's a bit where he doesn't really listen and he shoots down the arithmetic bird, so it shows that he doesn't care about the maths. But there is also the part where he's in the assembly and he keeps repeating "Amen, Amen, Amen," because it shows that he is desperate for the help. We've also got what life is like for Timothy at home. Okay, the fact that the adults in charge of him drink, the fact that he has to sleep in a sack on the kitchen floor. So what we're going to ask you to do is to write three C's paragraphs, one C's paragraph for each of the questions. And I'll just talk you through the C's paragraphs or on these next slides. This is a good C's paragraph. In the poem, it describes the way Timothy Winters looks. It says he has eyes as wide as a football pool. So what we have is that statement. In the poem, it describes the way that Timothy Winters looks. And then we have our evidence. It says he has eyes as wide as a football pool. Well, what does that mean? What's that quotation, eyes as wide as a football pool, mean? And that's our inference. It suggests he's got really wide eyes and they're always open. And so the inference really is just, well, what does that quotation mean? Okay. Then what we do is we zoom in. So we're zooming in on a word or a phrase. Now they have to be words or phrases from the quotation. So they have to be from the quotation that you've chosen. Here we've chosen the word football pool. It tells us that Timothy looks a bit unusual because it's like his eyes are popping out of his head. Okay, and what the writer is suggesting is that perhaps after World War II, there are still many people living difficult lives, and the reader will be a little bit shocked. So we have our zooming in and we have our explain, okay, linking our ideas to what life was like in those days. This is a good C's paragraph. Okay, if everyone wrote a C's paragraph like this, I would be incredibly happy. Okay. You've done lots and lots and lots of C's paragraphs. You can see this is only what 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 lines long, and that's the sort of quality that I think everybody should be aiming for. And you'll be writing one C's paragraph about each question. So think about how he looks. Okay, think about a line that I focused on for how he looks. Teeth like splinters. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. Think about how he behaves at school. Maybe how he's desperate, maybe how he doesn't really pay attention. Think about what life is like when he is at home. Maybe to do with his guardians, his father and his grandmother who's drinking, or maybe that focus on the bed, what his bed is like. And you'll be writing your statement, your evidence. So choosing a line that links to your question, and then the inference, the zoom, and the explain. Now, the important thing is that you give it a go. Give it a go as best as you can. If you get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. My job is to help you get it right next time. And I don't know whether I'm teaching you again next year, but I will definitely see you again next year. And your English teachers, whoever they may be, will be helping you develop these ideas as you go through. And that's really all C's is. Everybody, I think, can write a C's paragraph. Occasionally, they're not completely accurate, but if you can write the paragraph, then really, really you are making great strides to how easy it will be for you in 4 or 5 years' time, 4 years' time now, when you come to do your GCSEs. I'll just point out this excellent C's paragraph as well. In the poet, Timothy Winters is presented as a rather strange looking boy. So a statement suggesting what you think. Evidence, add in a quotation. So using the poets, the poet Charles Causley, and after Charles, there shouldn't be, on this particular video, you can see a comma after Charles, but I'm going to take that out. if I remember, before you see the actual PowerPoint, describes him as having eyes as wide as a football pool. This suggests that he might look shocked or a bit frightened because his eyes are so wide open. The simile, comparing his eyes to a football pool, might also suggest that Timothy is exhausted and unwell because it's like his eyes are popping out of his head, which is how people look when they're really tired or hungry. So this zoom has just got a little bit more detail. Okay, it's got the terminology, the simile, but it's got a little bit more detail about why his eyes might be so wide. Okay, if you don't spot that, that's not the end of the world. Okay, this is an excellent C's paragraph. But see how you can link your ideas to your understanding of what life will be like for Timothy. And this final explanation, it shows a greater understanding of the context. So a greater understanding that that there were lots of people like Timothy who had very, very difficult lives. And perhaps Timothy felt out of place at school because of his poverty. Maybe the fact that he wasn't paying attention was because of the fact that he was malnourished, he wasn't eating properly, he wasn't clean, he was struggling to sleep because he was sleeping on the kitchen floor. And because he was sleeping on the kitchen floor, it made his concentration at school very, very, very difficult. So the final slides in the PowerPoint are a reminder of a C's paragraph. And on this slide, you've actually got some sentence starters for you. Do use the sentence starters. It's not cheating at all. If you can come up with your own, fab. But if you can't, use the sentence starters to help you. Okay, that's what they're there for. And the idea is to have a go yourself. Okay, so you should be writing 3 C's paragraphs. Now, we are going to be giving you this first lesson, and you're going to be having the next lesson as well. Okay, because this video has gone on for quite some time. You're going to have to read through the slides as well, even though I've explained them a little bit. It's probably helped you to read through. And what I would suggest is you try to write 1 C's paragraph, maybe 2 C's paragraphs this lesson, and 1 or 2 C's paragraphs the next lesson. I think that will give everybody more than enough time to do that. Okay, we are coming up to the end of the year, so use your time carefully. Take it very, very slowly. Look at the quotations and think, okay, what does this quotation tell me? Which word can I zoom in on? Why should I zoom in on it? Is it a good word to zoom in on? Yes, it's a great word. Or I don't really understand that word. And if you don't understand a word, don't zoom in on it. And then the explanation. Well, why has the writer pointed this out to us? Why? How does that link to 1950s Great Britain? Now, the important thing is, and what I'll do is I'll just go back. Okay. We have got 2 paragraphs here of a good C's paragraph and an excellent C's paragraph, using the quotation, eyes as wide as a football pool. Now, what I don't want anyone to do is to write a paragraph using the quotation, eyes as wide as a football pool, because obviously we've given you the ideas for that. So you'll only be copying it out, and it's really a little bit of a waste of your time. There are far better quotations in the extract for you to be able to do that. So good luck, give it a go. And I will be giving you some feedback, probably verbal feedback, because I quite like the verbal feedback. It gives me a chance to have a chat to you, and it gives me the opportunity to give you more feedback than if I wrote it. And it's very difficult if I write it and then upload it and scan it. It's not exactly clear. So I'll probably give you some verbal feedback and see how you get on. So closing down the PowerPoint now. Stop presenting now. I don't know how I'm appearing on the screen now, whether I'm bigger or not, but good luck, give it a go, and best of luck. Give it your best shot.